Hello everyone, it's your Peacekeeper, and it's time for the next video in our How to Play series on the Royal Navy battleship line. This is the Tier 5 Iron Duke class of battleships. The Iron Duke class of battleships was a class of 4 ships built between 1912 and 1913. The 4 ships are Iron Duke, Marlborough, Benbow, and Emperor of India. The Iron Duke class were longer and wider than the preceding dreadnoughts and sported 10 13.5-inch guns in 5 twin gun mounts, much like the ships since the Orion class, with the AB turret and then XYZ or QXY, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And very familiar layout for those of us who were big U.S. battleship players. At Tier 5, obviously, we have the New York class and Texas, and both of those ships have the same arrangement. The Iron Duke class also featured 12 6-inch guns as secondary mounts because the 4-inch guns on previous battleships were considered to be too weak and not have enough range to successfully engage modern torpedo boats with the longer range torpedoes that were being developed during the time frame. After Jutland, these ships saw extensive rearming to thicken the deck armor and bulkheads between the magazines to improve survivability from longer range gunfire. However, they never actually saw any real action after Jutland. In fact, for the most part, these ships only saw combat at Jutland. In terms of service history, the Iron Duke was used as the flagship of the Grand Fleet with Admiral John Bellicoe in command. She took part in all major actions of the Grand Fleet during World War I, but only saw combat in one, and that is, of course, the Battle of Jutland. At Jutland, she was part of the main battle line of the Grand Fleet, where she is credited with sinking the HMS S-35, which was a torpedo boat that was launching an attack on the battle line. She scored 7 hits on the SMS König and caused serious damage to him. After Jutland, Iron Duke served as the flagship of the Grand Fleet until 1917, when the flag was transferred to the Queen Elizabeth. She served as a training ship until World War II, when she was converted to a floating anti-aircraft barge floating in Scapa Flow. Her secondary battery had been removed and used as coastal defense guns around Scapa Flow, and she would receive a number of different modifications. She had turrets removed that were replaced with smaller caliber guns that were used for anti-aircraft purposes. The rear fire control director back here was replaced with the high-angle one for anti-aircraft purposes. And she was used as an AA barge extensively during World War II. She'd actually be attacked by the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and was seriously damaged twice, to the point where they had to beach her in order to keep the ship from being a complete and total loss. In fact, Iron Duke is actually credited with influencing the Bismarck's captain to transit into the Atlantic via the Denmark Strait rather than other options that were closer to Scapa Flow, because the Luftwaffe mistook this ship and 2 decoys as being the main Royal Navy battleship fleet. And so that kind of influenced that as well. In 1948... Iron Duke was scrapped after being repaired back to an anti-aircraft barge during World War II. Marlborough participated in the Battle of Jutland and was the most heavily engaged of the 3 Iron Duke class ships that participated in the battle. She fired 162 main battery rounds out of the 292 fired by the 3 Iron Dukes that were there. During the battle, she was hit by a torpedo which tore a 70-foot by 20-foot hole, or 21-meter by 6-meter hole, in her side. Her speed was reduced to just 17 knots, but she continued to fight during the engagement until the listing, the fact that one side of the ship was sinking and the other side wasn't, caused her main battery to not be able to elevate high enough to stay in the fight. She would undergo 3 months of repairs in Humber, England, and then would be sold for scrap in 1932. Benbow was the last of the Iron Dukes to participate in the Battle of Jutland. She was ahead of the Iron Duke and Marlborough during the battle, but was undamaged during the engagement. Didn't really do a whole lot there. I mean, did fire off some main battery rounds at the German fleet, but is not credited with hitting any of them. She would be transferred to the Mediterranean in 1919 and supported Imperial Russian forces in the Black Sea before being sold for scrap in 1929 and then formally scrapped in 1931. The Emperor of India missed the Battle of Jutland as she was in port for refit and rearming. She was transferred to the Mediterranean in 1922, then back to the Atlantic in 1926, where she would be stricken from the Royal Navy's register in 1929 and sunk as a gunnery target in 1931. The hulk was raised and then sold for scrap shortly after being sunk. In terms of the in-game playstyle, the Iron Duke is the first ship in the Royal Navy battleship line that I can say feels like a proper battleship should. The AP on her works very well, and the HE is also very strong. It has usable gun range, tolerable stealth and maneuverability, with decent AA for a Tier 5 battleship. Of course, it's not going to be as good as Texas, but it's still very strong. The Iron Duke's biggest letdown, though, is the overall lack of durability. The ship, if it's not angled perfectly, will take massive damage from enemy battleship AP, and the ship is not the fastest ship at this tier either. In fact, if we pull off our speed flag here, you will see that the ship only goes 22.5 knots, which is only a knot and a half faster than the New York and the Texas go, basically. 21 knots is about what those go. The other thing that's, kind of... I just, the secondaries, while they do exist, I'm just not convinced that they contribute much to the battle. And as a result, the secondaries, it's not worth pushing into that range. The ship isn't maneuverable enough, and it's not fast enough to effectively get into that type of engagement to use them. Overall, the ship does play very well, and it's easily the strongest or one of the strongest Tier 5 battleships in the game. It does reasonably well in Tier 7 fights, which is unusual for a Tier 5 battleship, but it is quickly overwhelmed by focus fire. Alright, let's talk about some stats. We have 47,100 hit points, up to 305 millimeters of armor. That's going to be in the armor belt there. Speaking of the armor layout of the ship, it is an incremental armor design. The bow is 19 millimeters, but it steps up to 102, then 152, then 305, and then steps back down to 152 and 102. And you can see here, it's very easy for somebody to hit armor, and that has its disadvantages as well. And this is, if you're broadside in the ship or you're not presenting the right angle, any shells that hit this upper armor belt area, they're guaranteed to arm, and they're guaranteed to do normal pen damage. So this ship will take a lot of damage if not angled correctly. Okay, main battery consists of 10 of those 13.5-inch guns. They are mounted in 5 dual turrets. You've got two super firing pairs up front, one in the middle, like the New York, and 2 in the back, a super firing pair in the back. This one in the middle actually has really great firing arcs. In fact, you can bring pretty much all these guns to bear at just a little bit more broadside showing than ideal, and with that, all you have to do is turn into incoming fire a little bit, and you can pretty much bounce anything that comes in. Then expose them, shoot, and go right back to a little bit more of a nose-in profile. It's very difficult for other battleships to really do a lot of damage to you when you actually master that skill. Secondary battery, we do have these 4 dual 4-inch guns, and those serve as the anti-aircraft armament, 4.7 kilometer range there, and then of course the 12 single 6-inch gun mounts that we see there, and you can bring 6 of those to bear on a side, 4 of the 4-inch gun mounts, also a 4.7 kilometer range. Main battery shoots out to 16.8 kilometers, 30-second reload time. The 180 degree turn time is absolutely terrible. It's 56.3 seconds. It takes forever for this ship to get guns to traverse from one side to the other. 5,900 HE shell damage, 40% fire chance, and only 9,900 AP shell damage. But both shells are moving at a decent speed, and like I said, this thing will start fires if you need it to. Anti-aircraft defense, we've got 4 quad 50 caliber machine guns. There they are. There are 4 of those on board the ship. We also have 4 quad 40 millimeter Vickers. These are the famous pom-pom guns. This is the quad mount. And then we have 2 of the octuplet mounts, the 8-barreled mounts. Those are what everybody thinks of. And both of those are actually mounted on board the turrets. And then we have those 4-inch guns, the 4 dual turrets. And your AA bubble starts out at 5 kilometers, steps down to 2.5 kilometers, and then down to 1.2 kilometers. This is a ship that if you're running, if you plan on keeping it and you run advanced firing training and basic firing training on it, you're going to get very good anti-aircraft range and very good anti-aircraft damage per second. Max speed is just 22.5 knots, 650 meter turning radius, which would seem great, except for that number doesn't take into account the fact that the rudder shift is 13.2 seconds, and the rudder does not really start to take effect until the rudder is almost full over. So you almost have to be at maximum rudder in one direction or the other to get the ship to turn. Detection range by sea of 12.5 kilometers, that is going to be with Concealment Expert. 8.6 by air, and of course your detection range after firing in smoke is 12.6 kilometers. In terms of upgrades, I would recommend taking Main Armaments Mod 1 in this first slot for the 20% reduction in the chance of your main battery being incapacitated, plus a 50% increase in the hit point pool of your main battery, and a 20% reduction in the time it takes to repair the main battery. The only other option that I would really consider as viable at this tier is Magazine Mod 1 if you're out of det flags and you're worried about detonations. It doesn't happen very often in battleships, so I'm really not that worried about this, but that's a 70% reduction of the ship's magazine detonation chance. In the second slot, I'm taking Aiming Systems Mod 1 for the 7% reduction in the dispersion of your main battery. The 5% increase to the secondary battery firing range and 5% reduction in the secondary's dispersion is also quite useful. However, again, this ship, you're not going to be that close to where your secondaries are going to be doing a whole lot of damage very often. I mean, if you got a lot of support, I can see you pull it off. But the only other option that I would recommend at this tier is going to be AA Guns Mod 2 for the 20% increase in anti-aircraft firing range. There are enough carriers at this tier that is a viable build, especially if you've got advanced firing training on the captain to boost the range even further. And somebody's going to say, well, I run Main Battery Mod 2 for the decrease in traverse speed. I just don't think that this build is really that solid of a build. Again, we're going to be adding 5% to the main battery load time in order to get a faster turret traverse. So, longer reload for faster turrets. I'd much rather have the damage per second, personally. And secondary build, secondaries on this ship really aren't that reliable to use in a full-on build. In the third and final slot, I would recommend Damage Control Systems Mod 1 for the 3% reduction in the chance of flooding, as well as the 3% reduction in the damage received from a torpedo that hits your belt, your torpedo bulges, as well as the 5% chance to, the 5% reduction in the chance of getting a fire. Propulsion Systems Mod 1 and Steering Gears Mod 1, your engine and rudder does not get taken out enough on a battleship that these would ever be necessary, in my opinion. Alright, well that's the stats and all that. Let's go look at this ship in a battle video. Alright, so Iron Duke, the one downside to Iron Duke that's outside the ship's actual stats and control, the fact that it gets up-tiered a lot. So this is actually a Tier 7 fight. But the only Tier 7s they got a Tier 7 cruiser and a single Tier 7 destroyer. For the most part, this battle is a Tier 5, Tier 6 fight, and the map is Two Brothers. And Two Brothers is one of the better maps. I really do enjoy this map a lot, and even though this map always devolves into this long-range sniping, the nice part about it is, depending on how the enemy team sets up, there's a very good possibility that you're only going to be able to receive fire from, at most, half of the enemy fleet. I mean, I suppose there are times when you could get more than that, but any of the ships that go to the other side are going to not be able to engage you, which is just fantastic. That means that you don't have to worry as much about exposing, your broadside to enemy ships until you cross, the ends of the islands to the north or to the south. So right off the bat here, you know, we're traversing our guns to the right side of the ship, and probably going to end up going to the west. And it doesn't really matter which way you go on this map. Basically ends up being the same no matter what happens. It just kind of depends on how your team actually ends up going. And overall, tactics-wise, you know, again, key to the ship is remaining as angled as possible. Push when you have support. Don't push when you don't. That seems a little obvious, but you would be surprised at how difficult it is for some people at this tier to know when to and not to push. So the key there is going to be, where are their destroyers at? Where is my support at? Where are their battleships at? And if I push, am I going to be exposing my broadside to one or more battleship? And that could definitely be a massive detriment. Yeah, we went ahead and corrected Mr. Beer and a Smoke there, mostly because I highly doubt that their whole team is going to go to the west. That is very rare for that to happen on this map. It's actually more common for all of their ships to split, and I would say it's even more common for all the ships to go down the middle than it is for the all of them to go to the east or to the west. It just doesn't happen very often. Right off the bat, we got ourselves an Omaha that is a very juicy and tempting target, but unfortunately we've got islands that are in the way. Not only do we have the big island here in the middle, but we also have the island off to our left that if I were to try and turn and bring these guns to bear, that could cause a problem. So if we do that, you can see them hovering at the half rudder mark, kind of gauging how it's going to go. Are we going to be able to bring the guns to bear, or are we going to have to bail out of this? There's the Omaha. Okay, he's starting to turn out. Guns came on board. We're going to shot out on him. Whoa, look at that dispersion. A little bit more of a lead, and it wouldn't have mattered. With a hit like that, how could you not enjoy this? Already off to a fantastic start with 25,000 damage and 5 shell hits. So now we've got ourselves a T-22 is probably our next closest threat, but you know, we've got Cleveland's coming in. And well, since we deleted one cruiser, let's try and delete another. Now the Cleveland, ooh, look at this. What? That's a paddling. If I can aim, that's a paddling anyway. We'll see if I can pull it off. Oh, look at that. Yep, there's another. So another 16,000 damage. Yeah, that's rare. So Cleveland Citadel is in a really hard to reach place. It's not very easy to get to. So getting that rare Cleveland Citadel just always feels good. So the other thing to pay attention to is he is sailing almost bright. Yeah, we should save our salvo there. Well, maybe not. Need the kill. Nope. All right, well, we had some incoming fire there from the New Mexico and the Julio Cesare. And so, well, we should probably angle ourselves accordingly. So they are already down 3 ships in this fight. All 3 of them have been on our side of the map. What this means is that we outnumber them a lot. Now that can change very quickly. We do have an Omaha here that is just begging to be shot at by this Julio Cesare. And with that comes the inherent risk. Now the Julio Cesare is moving away. Yeah, 2,400 damage, not too bad. 1 normal pen. But with the risk of having an Omaha is that, well, Omaha is a very soft and squishy ship. If it's not played well, that can definitely cause problems. Don't mind me, just a very, very unmaneuverable battleship here. That actually probably saved him from eating a bunch of shells. The only destroyer that they have is a Podvoisky, but he just got detonated by our Minsk. Or Minsk? Yeah, it's Minsk. So let's go back to the Julio Cesare here. Look at the gun angles on this. Very good gun angles. Very capable. And 8,500 damage? Not bad. So we're already up to 51,700 some odd damage in this fight. And we aren't even top tier. We are bottom tier in this fight. Just barely bottom tier. So there you can see again that angling doing its best that it can to mitigate as much damage as possible. But the gun angles on this are so good. The only thing that would make this ship even more ridiculously overpowered is, there's another 6,500 damage, is if the ship had the ability of a much better rudder shift. And a lot of people ask me, what do you mean by that? And the stats in port say rudder shift, so that's the time it takes to get from one end of your rudder to the other end. And if you look at that number by itself, it ignores entirely what I would consider rudder effectiveness. And rudder effectiveness to me, there's another 2,600 damage. The rudder effectiveness to me is that a ship's rudder will have different steering capabilities depending on whether or not the ship, where the rudder is actually at on the ship. So in our case, at half rudder, it's not very effective. The ship doesn't want to turn at all. It has a very large turning radius at half rudder, and so it takes a lot of rudder input to actually get the ship to turn. Now, there are some ships that will start turning very quickly. Like, you barely touch the A or D key, and the ship is wanting to pull a full 180 on you. Okay, so we got a New Mexico over here, and we've got ourselves the Cap. We are at a point where we need to make a decision because they are pushing hard into our Cap, and there's not a whole lot of ships up there for support. 1,900 damage there with an HE salvo on a broadside New Mexico. But if our New Mexico goes back to our Cap, that's going to leave the Shores, Minsk, myself to cap their Cap. And I think we can manage that. So if we get the New Mexico and all that to go back and support the other ships, that would be a massive benefit. Okay, so we're going to switch back to AP here. We're going to fire off this HE salvo, see if maybe we can't add a fire and some pain to this New Mexico's life. Pretty much, nope, not going to. 5,800 damage with 5 normal pens and 2 shatters. So 7 out of 10 shells hit at 13.5 kilometers. The guns are plenty accurate. We're going to switch back to AP, though, because, well, let's face it. This ship is nearly broadside to me. No reason to shoot AP or HE at him. I mean, I guess now if we did, he had burned his repair party. Island there concealing us. That's always nice. Let's not run into the other island, though. Look at that shot grouping. 9,800 damage. Again, 7 out of 10 shells fired hit. Very, very accurate guns. Also very powerful. Up to 7,800, well, 78,503 damage. And still going up. It really looks like this is going to be one of them blowouts. We got 78,000 damage. They are at a huge disadvantage for ships. We've only got 2 ships that have been sunk, a battleship and a destroyer. They have lost a lot more than that. Oh. Nope, 4,300 damage. I wish that would have gotten me the kill, but we're in the Cap now, so we can do some work. And there's a very good likelihood that this New Mexico will survive long enough for us to get the kill on him. Can only hope, right? He's got 1,400 hit points. He's repairing, I think, ever so slightly. Maybe not. Nope, New Mexico goes down. Well, we're doing a lot of damage. We're not getting any kills. Yeah, there are worse things in this world. So at this point, their team finally decides to turn around. Now, we've lost a couple more ships since, and now we've got a Fiji that is showing that he's going to come back our way. Meanwhile, they continue to push our Cap quite heavily, but, the New Mexico went back to the Cap. Leander, Furutaka, Ahoytnik, and the Graf Spee. All of those ships, I think, should be able to do a pretty good job here, and what I'm planning on doing, honestly, is I'm not interested in capping this point. I think we can leave that to the Shores in Minsk. What I am interested in doing is finding out where this Fiji's at, and seeing if I can't take him out, and then possibly getting some good angles on the Iron Duke over there, Mr. Kaiser Robert, and see if we can't take him out of this fight. Of course, maybe we should stay in as long as possible, guarantee the win, be the team sport, right? Yeah, I suppose. We'll stay in as long as we possibly can, but I'm fully anticipating this Fiji to come around and be a bit of a problem. and I'm fully expecting him to be right there. In fact, I'm surprised he's not by now, which means he's probably coming through that tiny little gap. We should be spotting him here any moment now. There he is. Tiny little gap. There he is. Well, okay. Royal Navy cruiser. And how about 10,000 damage for your troubles? Well, he's got torpedoes, so slam on the brakes and turn out. Pray that he launches them long. I'm guessing he either didn't launch, or if he does, it's not going to do a whole lot. Yeah, go ahead and shoot at me. I'm really not terribly offended by this, because you're a goner. Why aren't you turning further out and away? I don't know what he's doing, but this is, yeah, expected. Well, they've managed to reset the cap, but we have taken out their poor little Fiji. Oh, there's their torpedoes. Fiji actually did a pretty good job all the way up until he came out of that island point. If I were him, what I would have probably done is I would have stayed a little bit more bow on, forced the battleship dispersion to actually not work in my favor, forced the guns to do some work. So traversing my guns back to the right side there, I get the distinct impression that this Iron Duke is going to be coming to try and reset the cap. You know, they've kind of thinned out our ships up there, but we've done a pretty good job of holding on to our cap and keeping them out. So all of these points that we're racking up, yep, I mean it's hurting them, and they're feeling the pressure. Now, if I were the Iron Duke, I think I would be a little bit more aggressive about getting back here. You know, it looks like he's been backing up this entire time. I don't know what that's all about, but... Well, we got a Minsk. Oh, I didn't even notice that the shores actually ended up dying. Potatoes, boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew. What about 11sies? Alright, well... No more 11sies. We're just gonna go for the jugular here. Yeah, he wants me to stay in the cap. I don't think so. I'm out for blood at this point. We might as well. With 2 battleships remaining, one of them all the way down to the south. This Iron Duke, I should be able to take him, especially with support. And it sounds like he's just reversing, according to the team. And look at that. There he is. My, what are you doing? He misses. I don't. Ended up doing about 6,000 damage to him, and poof, we disappear behind the island again. Now, he reset the cap. He took all the cap points off of me, and unfortunately, we lost a turret. That's really annoying. Well, I guess that will, govern our strategy here going forward, because it won't be ready by the time we get our next salvo up, or at least it probably won't be ready. Iron Duke is not presenting the world's best profile at this point. I'm hoping that the Minsk can help go around the other way. I will do my best to try and bait him into shooting at me. And to do that, I'm going to expose a rather unhealthy amount of broadside. Shooting up high there, and lots of bounce, well, missed, and no penetrations there on the one hit. So, yep, he did some pretty good damage there, so we managed to distract him, but still managing to mitigate the majority of the damage at which he's doing. I'm gonna go ahead and fire a shot there at his turret. It did actually do what I wanted it to do, but now he's in trouble because, look, there's the Minsk. Okay, now we end up firing. There's Confederate, another 9,500 damage. There's high caliber, and down goes the Iron Duke. Well, that worked out really effectively. 118,216 damage, just 1 kill, which is alright. 25 secondary hits, believe it or not. There I got done talking about how the secondaries really don't contribute much to this battle. 1 fire is all we got out of it. Alright, overall I do like this ship. I think it's a very strong tier 5. 4,828 XP, 1,570 base XP. There's the detailed report, credits, and XP screen. Overall, like I said, I really do enjoy this ship. It is a lot of fun as far as tier 5s go. If you're looking for a very good tier 5, this would be your ticket. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.